Great. People will be joining. So, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Ronald Vargas from the Land and Water Division at the FAO, and I'm very happy to moderate this webinar where we will be launching the International Network on Soil Fertility and Fertilizers. A very important network, particularly in this time that we have been facing some challenges related to crop productivity and where our soils are central. And we really need to see from a creative and innovative way how to address the different challenges that we are facing in terms of ensuring food security while protecting our environment, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, degradation, and trying to make our soil resilient in the agri-food systems. Today, we will be launching this network, and we will have very important speakers who will bring us different angles on soil fertility and how we can address it. This will be indeed the core of this webinar that will be setting the scene for the future network to play an important role. So without further ado, I want to, of course, thank all the participants and those who are joining. We had 1,200 registered participants. I'm sure that there were some issues and they are joining. And we are delighted to have very important speakers. And I would like to start directly with the opening of this webinar. And I would like to invite Dr. Li-Fen Li, the director of the Land and Water Division, to kindly open this webinar. Li-Fen, please.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and colleagues, welcome to the launch of the International Network on Soil Fertility and Fertilizers in Soil Fair. This new FAO network aims to address nutrition imbalances and promote the soils for nutrition concept for making soils healthy and fertile by 2030 as a contribution to the transformation of agri-food systems. I'm very pleased to see so many colleagues, so many experts from all over the world represented by all of you to participate this launching. And many of you have rather different background, from policy making to research, and also to those that manage the soils on a daily basis. Thank you all for joining us today. Food insecurity is one of the great challenges of our times, which directly affect about 691 to 783 million people worldwide in the year 2021. And compared to the number of 2019, it increased 122 million. You can find all these statistics in the SOFI report that was just launched last week in New York, the State of the Food and Nutrition Report. One of the driving forces of food insecurity certainly is soil degradation and soil fertility loss, which is already affecting 1/3 of the world's agricultural soils. Ladies and gentlemen, the preservation of soil health and soil fertility is a challenge under the current approach of agri-food systems. In some regions, agri-food systems are built upon high yield objectives and high rate of mineral fertilizer applications with low crop diversity, and nutritional quality is often overlooked. In contrast, other regions of the world facing fertilizer shortages or inaccessibility to these agricultural inputs. The soil fertility problems and nutrition imbalances have been exacerbated by the global fertilizer crisis, resulting from a 30% of increase in price, and more than 100% in some countries. In addition to the fertilizer crisis, there are other major challenges to achieve the sustainable management of soil fertility and fertilizers. The chronic lack of micronutrients derived from nutrient deficit soils and crops contributed to the malnutrition affecting more than 3.1 billion people in the world. The unknown and sometimes low quality and safety of fertilizers is leading to soil, water, and air pollution, and human, animal, and crop health. It is urgent and essential to have a better knowledge on the nature and conditions of different sources of nutrition used as organic or inorganic fertilizers. Farmers need to know what they are applying to the soils and the best way to apply them to optimize its efficiency. The Global Symposium on Soils for Nutrition, held last year, successfully addressed part of these topics by bringing together over 9,500 participants from 180 countries. The result of the 4-day symposium leads to a series of conclusions and recommendations. One of the most important ones is the launch of the new network to fill in the gap of sustainable soil fertility and fertilizer management. Dear colleagues, we are meeting here today to follow up on these recommendations by taking a first step to launch the INSOIFER, the International Network on Soil Fertility and Fertilizers. INSOIFER will foster the implementation of sustainable soil management practices so to avoid the underuse, misuse, or overuse of the fertilizers and reduce the environmental and health impacts of them in the future. An integral insight of the soil fertility will be at the core of this network's action. INSOIFER, the new network, will bring the stakeholders working on the technical aspect of the soil fertility and fertilizers together for implementing the recommendations of the symposium in the framework of the International Code of Conduct for Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizers, and as an important vehicle for the adoption of the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management. I encourage all of you to join and support the new network, INSOIFER, and work together for achieving the sustainable management of soil fertility and fertilizers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. Thanks a lot for setting the scene of the launching of this network. You touched different angles from this topic because, of course, soil fertility is at the center of various aspects if we talk about development. And you also mentioned particularly that the role that soils need to play in the agri-food system and the tools that are available to promote this, particularly in an intergovernmental setting like FAO. Thank you very much for that. That's the global overview of this network. Now, we would like to also hear our colleagues from different regions, their perspective in terms of soil fertility and the use of fertilizers. For this, I will now invite Mr. Dr. Zachary Stewart from the USA, who will speak about the need of fertile soils for a food secure world, and particularly what the USA is doing in this important topic. So, Dr. Stewart, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Ronald. And I'd like to start by thanking you and Dr. Li-Feng Li for your leadership and elevation of the importance of soil fertility and fertilizer for food security. Also, thank you both for your prioritization of building partnerships and networks to move this agenda forward at scale. So for most in this audience, we have been keenly aware of the keystone role soil health and fertilizer has for food security and our broader developmental objectives. But For a long time, soil health and fertilizer use efficiency were not widely prioritized by governments and the broader public. In the last nearly 3 years, when fertilizer disruptions hit due to compounding factors driven by COVID and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the world saw just how important fertilizer and soil health are for food security and poverty. The ensuing doubling and tripling of fertilizer prices led to lower food production and pushed tens of millions of additional families into food insecurity. This was most severe in areas with poor soil health and where fertilizer use efficiency was lowest. In response, the global community has elevated the prioritization of soil health and fertilizer use efficiency, and there is significant new momentum. The US government has worked to both mitigate the acute impacts of the fertilizer crisis on food security and poverty, and is supporting a more robust and long-term plan for improving soil health and fertilizer use efficiency. This is a whole of government approach building upon the Feed the Future initiative, including USAID and the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, the State Department's Office of the Special Envoy for Global Food Security, the State Department's Office for International Organizations, and the United States Department of Agriculture, among others. For this joint initiative, there are 3 elements that I would like to highlight. 1, soil health and fertilizer must go hand in hand. 2, prioritization of approaches that move proven practices to scale while maintaining specificity to individual farmer needs. And 3, the importance of efforts to improve coordination, integration, and alignment of initiatives in this space. So first, our strategy is built upon the codependence of soil health and fertilizer, including the combined use of organic and inorganic amendments. The benefits of fertilizer cannot be achieved without soil health, and the benefits of soil health cannot support profitable and productive food security without fertilizer. This nexus of soil health and fertilizer drives sustainable intensification. That is, increased food production and sustainability goals can be achieved simultaneously through intentional design. They are not simply antagonistic. Approaches that maximize synergies and minimize trade-offs across production, economic, environment, and social domains are at the forefront of our developmental agenda. The nexus of soil health and fertilizer is also at the core of climate change adaptation and mitigation. Soil health approaches that store more soil carbon often also provide improvements in fertilizer and water use efficiency and improved emissions intensities. While smallholders produce relatively low levels of total greenhouse gas emissions, their emissions intensity, that is the amount of greenhouse gas produced per unit of food, is very high. Tailored fertilizer application paired with soil health boosting practices not only improves productivity and profitability and climate adaptation, but also has a simultaneous co-benefit of improved emissions intensities. Next, there are many proven approaches to improve soil health and fertilizer use efficiency, but their applicability to farmers is often highly context-specific and knowledge-intensive. Tools and approaches that tailor and provide precise soil fertility guidance, leapfrogging traditional barriers to scaling, are a top priority. There is often significant heterogeneity at the field and farm level, and current blanket approaches often do not lead to suitable increases in productivity and profitability to drive adoption of such practices at scale. We have prioritized approaches that leverage soil maps and other geospatially explicit information to provide precise field-level soil fertility recommendations. This includes both improving the resolution of soil maps, but also pairing such information with locally sourced information to hyper-localized recommendations. This combination of geospatially information with farmer knowledge is central to precise and tailored information at scale. FAO's Soil Partnership, the International Fertilizer Development Center, IFDC, International Soil Reference and Information Center, ISRIC, and many national agricultural research partners are key partners in driving this agenda. Such localization approaches must also tailor information for the needs of farmers. For example, a fertilizer recommendation to optimize for food production is different from a fertilizer recommendation to optimize for profitability or environmental sustainability. Additionally, recommendations to optimize for a resource-constrained farmer are different from a recommendation for a less constrained farmer. Resource-constrained smallholders must make decisions based on which crops and fields will have a high rate of return with lowest risk. Tailoring such information to match both the biophysical and socioeconomic conditions is a primary driver for accelerating the adoption of such practices at scale. And finally, my third point, coordination, integration, and alignment of investments and prioritized activities is core to impact at scale. No single donor, implementing partner, or program can lead such efforts alone. A great example of this is the African Union's leadership in developing the Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan with clear priorities across policy and finance, fertilizer production, including accessibility and availability, soil health and fertilizer use efficiency, and institutional and human capacity building. The success of any one of these priorities is also dependent upon the success of another. Thus, practices in this space must move together. This action plan will be endorsed by African heads of state at the AU Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit later this year, and will drive delivery of this agenda over the next decade. The US government is aligning our investments with this African-led action plan, integrating with African national plans and partners that share joint priorities, and supporting coordination of a broad network of partners and stakeholders to move a multi-sector agenda forward. We encourage other donors and implementing partners operating in soil health and fertilizer space to support this African-led action plan. Thank you for this opportunity to share the US government's commitment to boosting soil health and fertilizer use efficiency. Really appreciate the opportunity, Ronald, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Zachary. This was very informative. Indeed, it is very important to understand the pillars of the USG intervention in terms of soil health and fertilizers. The two go together. That's already something very important to understand, because it's not a matter of just fertilizers, but we should always look at the soil health, because that's indeed the paramount basis of soil management, and fertilizers complement to that. So that's very important. Secondly, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that you are basing all these investments on soil information. So before you can manage your soil and apply fertilizers, you need to know the status of the different soil properties, and that's why a strengthening of soil maps, national soil information systems is a priority. Then you, of course, highlighted the very important role of developing synergies, avoiding duplication of efforts, because resources need to be used wisely. And the alignment of your investment with the African plans is fundamental. And of course, we hope everybody will mirror this. And now that you talk about Africa, I have the honor to invite our great colleague and friend, Dr. Wole Fatumbi, from the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, indeed to tell us in detail what are the preparation, the objectives of the upcoming African Conference on Fertilizers and Soil Health. I think that will be very important for all of us know. So, Wole, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ronald. Kindly permit me to share my screen and to share these few slides with the audience. Please kindly confirm.
We can see your screen, but if you can put it in presentation mode.
Okay, let me just do that.
No, it went out.
Yes, I'm just trying to do that now. Just share the screen.
We can see your screen if you just try to get the presentation mode.
Okay, I'm just doing that. Is it getting in now? Not yet still.
No, I don't know why, but it went out again.
It went out again. Yeah, so
Yes,
let me
we
just.
cannot see your screen.
A moment, please. Here.
Fine, now we can see it. It's great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much again, and thank you for your patience. I will run through these few slides to show briefly what Africa is doing, what Africa is doing around the issue of managing African soil. And it's important to put this discussion in context, especially when it relates to Africa. It is important to understand African soil, and it will be great to build on the 3 points that Zachary really put on the table. Those 3 points relate very well with Africa, but it's also very important to have a good understanding of African soil as we strive to build solution to this big problem. In Africa, our soil is all we've got. And it is for us, if it is all we've got, then we think that it should be managed effectively for us to get the best out of it in terms of production of food and fiber for the teeming population. I mean, mitigating the different effects of climate change, and then enhancing the livelihood and the quality of life of so many that depend on the soil. This screen I'm showing just put everything in context. But Ronald and panelists and participants, we need to understand what African soil is. And this is what I think is missing in most discussion and in most solutions that we bring forth to resolve the problem of soil in Africa. Many of us tend to forget that African soil is actually quite old. And African soil, compared to a number of other places on the globe, is largely made up of low activity clay minerals. And so the colloidal property is inherently little, requesting for more effective management. In fact, it will not be an understatement to say that African soil is inherently low in fertility. And that is calling for a careful management of these resources for us to get the best out of it. Of course, climatic variables also contribute to some of these effects that we see. And so we must...
I think you are still in the first slide, so I don't know if
Yes,
that's
I'm moving.
okay.
Don't worry. I'll get there within the 10 minutes that I have. So
No,
this
no,
is,
take it easy, it's fine.
I just want to emphasize this so that we have the knowledge of the core thing. African Union is working strongly, okay, to ensure that we manage African soil. And since the year 2020, I mean, effort has been going on to develop these. Two strong initiatives have been commissioned by the African Union. The first one is the Soil Initiative for Africa, and that is a big program to manage African soil. Now, to implement Soil Initiative for Africa, African Union commissioned also the development of African Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan, which is a 10 years implementation of this thought. These two initiatives, as it were, or these two instruments, they are going to be approved for utilization in the upcoming summit, and the declaration will be made by head of state. It is expected that this summit is going to take place before this year runs out. For the Soil Initiative for Africa, the vision is clear, and that is to have healthy and resilient soil in Africa. I mean, to come up with an African-led soil management system to empower land users across Africa to use practices that will restore degraded land and sustain soil health, and to ensure that all this action, they respond to the issue of productivity, income, prosperity, resilience to climate change, and this must be reflected in national priorities. There are 4 key investment areas for the Soil Initiative for Africa. And the first one is to integrate soil health and water management planning and implementation at different governmental levels. The second is to build human, institutional, and social capital in terms of research, extension, and training, just to ensure that this objective. The third one is to optimize data and information for effective planning and monitoring. And this resonates very well with the thought that Zachary and Ronald also mentioned in the course of our discussion this morning. Of course, a number of organizations are already working on soil information system, but this program thinks strongly about putting soil information system in the hand of the smallholder farmer. The fourth pillar is to ensure enabling policy, legal and regulatory framework for the action that leads to the effective management of soil in Africa. Just like I mentioned, that is the 4th pillar of soil information and soil initiative for Africa. But there is the 10 years action plan, and the framework, the broad framework of the action plan is to create an enabling and supporting mechanism. And this also is revolves around coming up with technical interventions and innovation. Of course, a lot of technology systems has been developed over time, but we reckon that new ones need to come up so that we do this. Then the third is the issue of capacity. There are 4 key outcomes also that is set for the action plan. And the first and principal one is to improve policy, investment, finance, and market for sustainable and healthy soil and fertilizer management. There are outputs that are required in this for this particular outcome. The second one is to improve access and affordability of fertilizer, both mineral and organic. You agree with me that for African soil, the two are fitted together to deliver the type of healthy soil that is required to achieve the broad developmental outcome. The third outcome here is greater efficiency, resilience, and sustainable use of mineral and organic fertilizer. This is also as important. And the fourth outcome is institutional and human capacity enhancement for sustainable soil health and fertilizer management. Now, the action plan fits in snugly into the Soil Initiative for Africa. Now, the Soil Initiative for Africa is developed as a framework, but the action plan It's more explicit and it's going to show it. For implementation of these two instruments that is going to commence and is going to gain momentum, I mean, 4 key issues are important. The first one is domestication of this idea. And the third is to use the existing framework, the CADEM framework, Agenda 2063, and the CADEM 10 years plan and its objectives. So this is not creating something new on its own, but the new creation, as it were, is fitted with existing framework at the continental level. The second, which is really very important, is the issue of leadership and coordination. Now spend a few minutes on this. African Union is an African Union, and as well as Howden NEPAD is expected to play leadership in the implementation. But they need to come up with a coordination mechanism, that will support this implementation in a coherent manner. It's an important initiative of the Commission. What we don't want in this coordination is duplication of effort. Now that this has started in the last 3 years, we begin to see duplication of efforts again. While we are waiting for the president to set in or to approve the Soil Initiative for Africa, we've seen development partners coming in from this different angles, and things are already taking place when the coordination mechanism is also not. This is not what we want. Of course, time is not on our side, but we want this effort to be coordinated. We want a link to a central body which can help coordinate efforts so that it delivers. And the third one is the implementation consideration and financing. Efforts should be placed on scaling technologies. It should give focus to farmers and create system innovation. Then the issue of communication coming, and the increased focus on soil health is really very important for us to make the type of progress that is required. I mean, I have thoughts also around the financing mechanism. How do we finance this? Definitely, we need to think carefully about multiple sources of finance that comes from Africa itself and the support of the various development partners. Ronald, let me stop there. I'm sure that many other things that we need to talk about will come in the course of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wole, for sharing this very important information. I have been looking at the chat, and many people would like to have a copy of your presentation. Of course, usually after this webinar and launch, we will make available, with the permission of the speakers, the presentations, but also the recording of this webinar, so that those who couldn't attend can also learn from this. Look, I think from what I know and I have been following, this is one of the most important developments in terms of soils in Africa, and we really hope it will materialize soon with the conference, and particularly after that when it comes to implementation, because that's the most challenging part. And from FAO side, of course, count with us, and we will be there for supporting or playing any role that you think you consider important. And this network, of course, it will be there to also support you from the technical point of view if needed be. Well, before going to the next presentation, I would like to see if there is one question to Wole that any participant would like to make. So if there is someone who would like to make a question.
Can I make a question, Ronald?
You want to make a question per se? Okay, go ahead, please.
No, it's just that I was missing the microorganisms. I'm going to talk about this, but in this Africa plan, really the role of microorganisms in both fertilizers and soil health is so important, and I did not see you mentioning microorganisms in this very nice program of in Africa.
Wole, please.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, Maringela, for that important question. Yes, microorganism is very important to the health of the soil. And you know, giving attention to microorganism is actually implicit within the framework of soil health. Is an important component. And so by the time we break it down to output action, you begin to see that come up prominently. As you and I know, I mean, we cannot have organic fertilizer without delving into the microbial structure. We cannot have atmospheric nitrogen fixation without looking at all those things. So in the area of managing soil health particularly, and optimizing fertilizer application, the issue of microbes is going to play a prominent role. And the Action Plan and Soil Initiative for Africa is giving a lot of attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Look, because of time, what we will do is, okay, we separated the slot for questions and answers. So those who would like to raise questions, please hold on. We will give you the space. Otherwise, if you want to anticipate, you can write the questions on the chat. And also to all the speakers, there are colleagues asking for your contact detail. Of course, that's up to really you if you would like to share it or not. With this background from Africa, I'm delighted to invite Professor Deli Chen to give us a keynote on changing the perception of what fertilizers are beyond synthetic and mineral sources. Please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ronald. Can you see my screen?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, Ronald, and thanks for the great initiative of the FAO for the InSoifer initiative. So I'd really like to share my research and the ARC hub, in particular the perceptions and the topics. And this topic was given by an organization. So I'm a professor of the Melbourne University in Australia. So we all know the food security, and I'm really want to share the experience, and research about the nitrogen fertilizer management. As we know, worldwide, and we use 130 million tons pure synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. I would say, more than 95% the food produced in the world rely on chemical fertilizer. So cost the farmers $500 billion per year, and 2% of wood energy and 5% natural gas to produce the synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. But plants only use about 50%. The rest lost the environment. So it's $250 billion per year, the financial cost to the farmers, but the societal cost, which is a magnitude high. The societal cost is due to the air pollution. The ammonia contributed to PM 2.5, and water pollution, biodiversity, greenhouse gases emission, we all know. So there are many ways to improve nitrogen fertilizer efficiency. We all know the 4R principle: use the right source of fertilizer, right rate, right time of application, and the right method of application. For example, if you bury the urea in the soil, you can minimize ammonia volatilization. Another way, I will share is the research center I lead is to improve the efficiency of the nitrogen fertilizer, is to use enhanced efficient fertilizer, which including urease inhibitor, and to inhibit the urea hydrolysis to ammonium, therefore to minimize ammonia volatilization, or nitrification inhibitors to inhibit the oxidation of the ammonium to nitrate. Therefore, we can reduce and nitrogen leaching, denitrification, the greenhouse gases emission. And the control release, if we can release the nitrogen nutrient to match the plant crop and demand, and then we can improve the efficiency. So this is actually today, and I'm in the middle of my hub workshop, and the Australian Research Council, Australian government, the fertilizer company, and the university jointly and supported this ARC research hub for smart fertilizer. It's a 5 years project, and $70 million is quite a significant investment, which I'm the director. So as I said earlier, the society cost is huge. This is the European National Assessment, which was completed quite a few years ago. You know, the societal damage of the reactive nitrogen loss of environment is 70 to 300 billion euro per year in the European Union alone. Majority is due to health, human health. It's, as I said, it's air pollution and another ecosystem health, water pollution, biodiversity, and climate change. And you can see from this slide on the right-hand side, the majority of the water pollution is from agriculture, and 90% ammonia pollution is from agriculture, 50% half from fertilizer, half from animal production system, and NOx is mainly from industry and fossil fuel. The greenhouse gas into 70% from agriculture. So we spend so much money and to produce chemical fertilizer, and cause so much damage. But on the other hand, the livestock, intensive livestock system worldwide almost produce 100 million tons of the nitrogen, which is 70% is lost to the environment. So the intensive livestock production are the hotspots for reactive nitrogen pollution. And the study we did in Australia, we quantify the nitrogen losses, and in a cattle feedlot, which we use the quantum cascade laser, use aircraft and open pass laser to measure and ammonia losses, for example. And here's the result. I'm just share in business as usual. And cattle every day intake 300 grams of nitrogen, which is 10 times, which is 3 kilograms of gluten. But 155 is lost as ammonia. But if we spread the brown coal lignite on the animal pens, the surface, we can reduce the ammonia losses by more than 60%. And then the cattle manure become nitrogen-rich manure and reduce the air pollution as well. So if we can capture, mitigate all the nitrogen losses from intensive animal production system, cattle feedlot and the chicken farm, piggery, and even aquaculture, we can reduce the chemical fertilizer use by 50%. So, you know, listen, cattle feed manure with capture with lignite, it's a natural rich and manure we applied in the soil through sorghum. You can see the biomass increased by 40%. Also increase the soil carbon sequestration, as well as reduce the air pollution, greenhouse gases emissions. Okay, I want to share the concept of the paradigm change. Okay, this is this is 3P concept we all know, and but in the past, we really much focus on the profit, which we don't blame people. If we farming, you have to make a profit. we probably pay less focus attention on the planet, the society. And since the Green Revolution, when the fertilizer is an important contribution of the Green Revolution, the farmers, when make a fertilizer decision, only consider the fertilizer input cost, the farm gains, income. The societal is the impact on the environment, very much the talking slogans, because nobody pay for listen societal cost, or if we can avoid the societal cost, become societal benefit. But nobody pay for that. No value, no evaluation. And for example, and I originally come from China. In the Lake Tai near Shanghai, the Chinese government spent last 2 decades, spend billions of dollars to clean up this water pollution, water and eutrophication, but not effective. And it's still the farmers keep polluting. In Australia, we just spent the budgeted $2 billion try to reduce the nutrient loading to the Great Barrier Reef. But on the other hand, there's no financial incentives for the precision agriculture, for better management, for more high efficient fertilizer. We know the environment is, when it's polluted, it is going to cost 100 to 1,000 times more to clean up. But okay, that's excessive, as the previous speaker mentioned. But on the other hand, we cannot ignore the mass balance. Same story, same scenario, same thing happened in Australia, like in some African country. In Australia, on a grain feed industry, actually we do not apply enough nitrogen, which is quite unique in Australia compared to other dairy, sugarcane, cotton, excessive nitrogen. But on the grain, we remove more nitrogen than what fertilizer input. So what's happening? Of course, the declining organic matter. We are actually mining soil nitrogen, soil fertility. We cannot keep doing forever. We cannot ignore the simple mass balance. Agriculture, there's a concept. Agriculture, we all want worldwide. We want agriculture more sustainable, more efficient, but more green. But there's no evidence index benchmarking. You walk in the supermarket, you all say organic food, but you can't say the beef from Australia or beef from US, which one has a lower environmental footprint or which one is greener. Like washing machine applicants, you have 4-star energy. For car, you have to have how much greenhouse gas produced per kilometers. But come in agriculture, we don't have evidence-based indexes. So that's what I want for research we are developing. We start from nitrogen to develop nitrogen indexes. So per unit of agriculture products, how much reactive nitrogen is emitted. So we need to the field measurement, the modeling, remote sensing, consider how supply chain. The purpose is one objective to influence the policy change. So don't, and like China used to do, the subsidized fertilizer and the contaminate environment and then clean up, which is far more expensive. Rather, we should provide this and financial incentive for the farmers for better products, so policy change. And on the other hand, is influence consumers' choice. If we have food labeling, green labeling, let's say green labeling, and we can influence consumer choice. Ultimately, the market premium of the green food. For example, for Australian beef, if you use lignite per kilogram, ammonia and the emissions, it's only 1/3. So we developed a nitrogen system and to combat this agricultural pollution, and by really to share responsibility. If the farmers or fertilizer products can reduce the greenhouse gas emission and the non-poisonous pollution, it's a benefit to our society. as a society, we should reward them, especially taxpayers' money, and provide financial incentive. That's paper we publish. And we're going to start a new project and funded by Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research in Laos. So really much is to provide the evidence-based and research. We already, and in the previous research, we found the low input nitrogen fertilizer enhance the nitrogen conserving processes like biological nitrogen fixation or DNA dissimilar natural reduction of ammonium. So there's scientific evidence, but that's not enough because, so if someone can pay and the market premium or government financial incentive, and then we make this the green rice, green production is profitable. So really, this research, we are going to develop framework to calculate evidence-based indexes, and then use it on that indexes, and then we calculate the green value. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chen. I think this was very important, interesting, because you gave us a global overview of the situation with fertilizers in its relation with food security, but then the impact on both the food production, the income, the expenses that farmers incur, and of course, the trends that we all need to really be aware of. I saw an interesting question in the chat, and I think it's very important if you can help us with an answer. So let me find it. Yes, what, according to you, Professor, what will be if there is a role for artificial intelligence in the field of soil fertility and fertilizers? Do you think there is one?
Yes. In fact, and I didn't share all the detail with you. Yes, we do use that, and we use that the AI and machine learning, all this stuff. Well, we're more in a data analytics points and research, because we data mining, machine learning, new modeling process to develop and evidence-based indexes for agriculture products, because there's a wealth of data worldwide published so many years. If we're going to put together, it's going to help and us to develop let's say the green index for agriculture products, of course, and this intelligence we can use in and the remote sensing and the insects detection. There's other objective, other area research which I'm not expert in. We really much use the machine learning data analytics to develop the green indexes.
Thank you very much, Professor. That's much appreciated. Okay, so colleagues, participants, if you have any other question, please put it in the chat and we will try to address with our speakers. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Mariangela Hungria from Embrapa, Brazil, to tell us about biofertilizers as an alternative solution to boost soil health and productivity of our agri-food systems. So, Mariangela, the floor is yours, please. I think you are mute.
Sorry. Okay, now let me go back again. So can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see and we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about biofertilizers replacing chemical fertilizers and contributing to soil health. I believe that today we cannot talk about fertilizers and soil health without talking about microbes. Microbes are getting an increasing attention and they deserve this for decades. But now finally, it seems that everybody is seeing their importance. My name is Maria Hungria. I'm a researcher at Embrapa Soybean Center in Londrina, southern Brazil, where I work with Dr. Marco Antônio Nogueira, and I'm also a coordinator of a national program of microbes in agriculture in Brazil. So we have this paradox. We cannot do agriculture in large scale to attend to food security without adding chemical fertilizers. So we need chemical fertilizers. But as we saw, Professor talk a lot about these problems of low efficiency, water contamination, and emission of greenhouse gases. So I add to that the problem of price and importation in most countries. Taking as example Brazil. Brazil, 1/3 of our economy is based on agriculture, but we are importing 85% of all chemical fertilizers that we are using. So we are completely dependent on other countries for doing agriculture. That's the most important thing for our economy. And that happens in many countries. And very important, chemical fertilizers also affect soil biodiversity. There are several papers and initiatives also showing that chemical fertilizers, pesticides, they affect soil biodiversity. So do we have any alternatives? Yes, we do have plant growth promoting microorganisms that can partially or fully replace chemical fertilizers with economical, environment, and social benefits. Have many opportunities. And Brazil today, because we were so short of money to import fertilizers, and because we were very lucky that we had microbiologists that always believed on this role of microorganisms. So we have today kind of leadership in this use of biofertilizers or inoculants, as we call them here. And I'm going to show you some positive experience that we have, such as beginning with our phosphorus. Our soils, tropical soils, are very poor on phosphorus, and phosphorus fertilizers, they are plants can take just about 15% because it's holding to the oxides of our soils. So after 15 years of research, looking for the natural diversity in plants that were going well in soils with a low addition of phosphorus, we found two strains that had two major mechanisms. One is solubilization of phosphorus sources that are less soluble. We do have some rock phosphates here, and we can take advantage of that. And they also have other mechanisms, mainly the synthesis of phytohormones. As you see here, you have more roots. And today our major focus is more roots, because having more roots, you can have higher uptake of nutrients and water. The first inoculant based on these two strains and towards phosphorus nutrition was released in 2019 for the maize crop, and today has the registration for soybean, for sugarcane, and it's already in more than 6 million hectares. So the farmers accept very well that. Potassium uptake. We also have microorganisms that can solubilize potassium. They can increase root growth. And here we have, for example, Pseudomonas and Nasospirillum brasiliense, two strains that we selected, and they were able to improve the efficiency use of potassium fertilizer. So this inoculant was released in the market in 2021. Nitrogen. Nitrogen is the most wonderful process for plant nutrition and soil fertility. We have this biological nitrogen fixation with a variety of bacteria that can associate with plants in several degrees. The most successful is, of course, rhizobia with legumes. And here in Brazil, we have more than 70 years of research. We have selected elite strains for trees, temperate and tropical forage, temperate and tropical grain legumes, green manure, and I'm talking about hundreds of kilograms of nitrogen that can be given to the plants almost for free. So we have to take advantage with that. And in Brazil, then we established a long time tradition of using. Today we have a market of more than 110 million doses of inoculant of rhizobia per year commercialized among farmers. But more than 90% of these rhizobia inoculants are for the soybean, because soybean is our most important example. Brazil is today the first world soybean producer, and I can guarantee that we only achieve this position due to investment in research, in technology, industry, and legislation with the biological nitrogen fixation. So, and if you ask me the limit, I still do not know the limit of these strains because it's incredible. They were able to fulfill the needs of genotypes that produced 1,000 kilograms per hectare in the 1960s, and they are still able to fulfill all the needs of the soybean today, genotypes producing 6,000, 7,000 kilograms per hectare. And for you to have an idea about the economic and environmental impact, considering the price of the nitrogen fertilizer in Brazil today, the area crop, our grain yield production, then we have that the country saving $25.5 billion per year not using nitrogen fertilizer with the soybean. And as important as this one is that we are not emitting 240 million megagrams of CO2 to the environment. But our major focus now has been other bacteria that can increase the use efficiency of chemical fertilizers. And I'm going to give the best example that we have now. That's the for nitrogen. We have some Azospirillum brasiliensis strains. They do contribute with a small quantity of nitrogen fixation, but they have a major role in phytohormone synthesis. And then we have root increase, up to 3 times more several root parameters. And look how beautiful this can be. Here is one experiment where we add 100 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare to the maize crop labeled with N15. So in the non-inoculated control, the plant was able to take 34% of these 100 kilograms. But by inoculating with these strains of Azospirillum, increase it to 58%. This is very important to improve the use efficiency of a chemical fertilizer. We are talking about an improvement of 70%. And this was also very beautiful. We launched this technology last year. So we did 30 field trials for 10 years and 100% of nitrogen applied in cover, 90 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare in all experiment was statistically the same as adding 75% of nitrogen and inoculating with azospirillum. So we are talking about saving 25% of nitrogen fertilizer in a crop that's in more than 20 million hectares today. And then we thought, and why just use thinking about one microorganisms? We can join microbial process. And then we did several studies and we launched the co-inoculation of soybean and also of a common bee. So the rhizobia, that's the industry of nitrogen fertilizer, with azospirillum, that's the industry of phytohormones. So in all the areas where we have a established population of rhizobium, but we do add inoculants every year, and we have an average increase in grain yield of 80.4% of grain yield without adding any nitrogen fertilizer. We double this benefit, but adding also azospirillum. The first commercial inoculant was launched in 2013-14, and it was amazing. First, several researchers published field experiments confirming the benefits of co-inoculation. Doing a meta-analysis, we saw statistically significant improvements in root, nodulation, nitrogen grains, and grain yield. And fantastic, in just this short period. Today, one third of all soybean growers in Brazil, they are using co-inoculation. And we are talking about more than 10 million hectares. So, in conclusion, microbes can help agriculture. The use of nitrogen fertilizers in many ways in addition to biological nitrogen fixation. Improving the use efficiency of chemical fertilizers, also enriching the soil nutrients, because several studies confirm that one third of all the nitrogen that comes from nitrogen fixation with legumes relies on nodulate roots and in the soil. So we can, estimates here in Brazil are of enriching the soil with 36 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen. And very important in this global change that we are having increasing drought periods is the mitigation of water stress, because by improving root growth or other mechanisms like adding mucus to the roots and reducing the loss of water, and we have 2 inoculants already for that, we can help mitigate short periods of water stress. And then this is a powerful tool for this increasing period of drought that we have. So we do believe here that microbes can be the stars of a new sustainable and regenerative agriculture, supplying nutrients for the plants and contributing to maintain soil biodiversity and health. So we cannot talk today about fertilizers without talking about this. For many years, we thought that microbes were kind of enemies of chemical fertilizers and vice versa. No, today they are friends. They must work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariangela. I think this was very insightful, bringing a different angle in terms of addressing the challenge of producing crops and where the nutrients coming from. Well, I think there are a number of questions, and I will pick one that I saw that is very much related. What about if smallholders, small farmers want to utilize this approach, this technology that you are presenting today? What are the steps that one needs to follow in order to really move into this new, or not new, but at least alternative source of nutrients? How can they do? Can you please elaborate?
Yes, we extension with qualified person is very important. We had an experience, a very nice experience here in my state, Paraná state, in Brazil, where for 5 years we worked with more than 3,000 farmers. They are soybean growers, but small farmers for the Brazilian standards, a maximum of 50 hectares. So every year we we went there. It was a co-inoculation experience. We showed them, we did these reference unities, and then they realize the difference in nodulation, in root growth. And after 5 years doing this economic study, we thought we saw that it was an average of $110 per hectare of profit for the farmers, in addition to enrichment of the soil. So what we have to do to reach the small farmers, it is to take these technologies through extension people to them.
Thank you very much. And I will, there is another question that I would like to make, because I think it's very important. It says, with intensive production of soybeans in Brazil, what is the status of soils in the country? Does the production system allow crop rotations, and which crops are used?
Yes, we do have this nice condition here that we can grow all over the year. So there are some regions where we do up to 3 crops per year. So usually the crops that rotate with soybean, maize, here in the south part of the country, wheat, but we also have some very interesting system that now we are trying to increase the use, but it's increasing a lot. It's crop, livestock, and forest management. It's very interesting. We grow soybean, then we go with maize, and then with brachiaria, then we put the cattle. There are some trees also. So then we are trying to include more species in our system.
Okay, Mariangela, thank you very much. I think this was very useful, and well, I hope we will still have time to go for more questions, but let me stop here now and invite my colleague, Dr. Vinisa Sainz, who will make an introduction on why the International Network on Soil Fertility and Fertilizers, although I think this is very clear from the previous presentations, but I think Vinisa will go into the details. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ronald, very much. Let me share my screen. So thank you, good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. As Ronald said, I will try to address this question: why we would need an international network on soil fertility and fertilizers. And for that, I would like to share with you some topics, some information. Perhaps the main thing that comes to our minds when we talk about food security and hidden hunger is food insecurity, sorry. So food insecurity is driven by different factors. For example, poverty and pandemics. We all know that more than 700 million people are facing hunger, and that this number increased after the pandemics. Then, of course, war and political issues. Then migration, this is very important. The global total number of people that has been forced to move from their places that they live has reached more than 82 million. Then, of course, we have climate change, drought, and flooding. About 82% of the crop production loss is because of drought, and also floods and strong storms have a lot of impact on crop losses. And then we have, of course, environmental degradation. For example, 80% of the ocean pollution comes from land-based activities, mainly from the unsustainable use of fertilizers. So one of the main factors, of course, is soil degradation and fertility loss. So we shouldn't forget that more than 95% of the food we all consume comes from soils, but then soils are in great danger. About 1/3 of the global crop soils have a certain degree of degradation, which is, of course, constraining food security. But there is plenty of evidence that sustainable soil management could produce up to 58% more food without jeopardizing soil health. So another factor that I want to discuss with you is nutrient imbalances. Nutrient imbalances is caused many times because of unsustainable crop practices. So we have currently different contrasting scenarios. On one side, we have fertilizer shortages, inaccessibility of fertilizers, underuse of fertilizers, which leads to low yields, plant nutrient deficiencies, and ultimately leading to crop deficiencies and, of course, human deficiencies. And then on the other side, we have these high yield objectives, more oriented agriculture to these high yield objectives, high rates of mineral fertilizer applications, low crop biodiversity, like Dr. Mariangela has explained. And we have very frequently in this type of agriculture overlooking nutritional quality, contribution significantly to greenhouse gases emissions. And on top of this, we have a high variation in soils, climate, crops, topography. We have different resources in different countries, and culture. Culture is very important when it comes about crop management and fertilizer management, and also the climate change resilience in the different countries. We cannot escape of talking about the fertilizer crisis. Soil fertility loss has been exacerbated by the global fertilizer crisis, jeopardizing a sector that has been historically vulnerable, which is farmers, and especially smallholders. So we have different factors, social factors changing the global outlook, supply shortages triggering price hikes and risking farmers, and also higher prices leading to a soil nutrient crisis. So as an example, sanctions and curtailing of supplies in the Russian and Ukrainian and Belarus nations are preventing about a significant amount of the potassium reaching the market, causing scarcity and price increases, but also the reduction of energy available is also impacting the fertilizer supplies and fertilizer production, especially in the case of the nitrogen. So all this, on top of this, also the uneven distribution of the nutrient stocks. For example, phosphorus and potassium stocks are concentrated in only a few countries, leaving in vulnerability condition to other countries. Then we have soil fertility loss and greenhouse gases emission. Food systems are responsible for 1/3 of the global anthropogenic greenhouse gases emissions. So all this is leading to low fertilizer accessibility, yields and food production affectations, income impacts for the farmers. And we need then to provide the farmers and the nations and the different countries with new alternatives to cope with this fertilizer crisis. Then last year we had the Global Symposium on Soil for Nutrition. I know many of the people and participants that are here were participating in the symposium. So after different forums, plenary session, presentations, etc., we came up with these 6 recommendations that are available in the outcome document for consultation online. Then the 6 recommendations are: number 1, map and monitor soil nutrients and soil fertility and deepen the knowledge about the soil nutrient budget. Number 2, develop the innovative approaches and new alternative for nutrient sources and enhance fertilizer use efficiency. Number 3, assess the quality and the safety of the fertilizers that are being applied to the soils. Number 4, to advocate for the adoption of sustainable soil management, because this is still the most cost-effective solution to increase sustainable the nutrients in the soils. Number 5, to consider driving forces. We are immersed in these global challenges as water availability, climate change, poverty, etc. And then number 6, to advocate for the inclusion of soil fertility and soil health in the legal framework of the different countries. So one more recommendation of this symposium was to launch the International Network on Soil Fertility in Fertilizers. Why? Because we need to address nutrient imbalances and promote the adoption of soils for nutrition concept for making soils healthy and fertile by 2030. And of course, as a contribution to the transformation of agri-food systems. So this new network would represent an important vehicle for the implementation of the symposium recommendations, but also of an important normative tool that the Global Soil Partnership has launched and developed, which is the International Code of Conduct for the Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizers, and also the voluntary guidelines for the sustainable soil management. So why the network? On top of all this outstanding presentation that we have heard and the factors that I have explained, we have other factors. We need to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals. Soils are directly linked, especially soil fertility is directly linked in many provisions of ecosystem services, but especially in food production. Then we have that the society is demanding for safer and more nutritious food. So we need to understand that for that, we need first nourished soils. We also need food production without externalities, without greenhouse gases emissions or pollution. We also need soil nutrition without human, animal, and crop hazards. We know that the soils and the fertilizers, different sources have pathogens, or for example, that some mineral fertilizer sources are enriched in heavy metals, and we need to avoid that. But also it's important that we need to be consistent with circular economy, and we also need to go with this flow and transit to low carbon footprint in our agri-food systems. So we need to promote recycling and reusing different sources of nutrients to promote the elaboration of compost in the local sites, etc. And we all know here, I have been seeing in the chat that we have many examples of successful sustainable soil management practices. Here you have some examples: zero tillage, organic farming, conservation agriculture, agroecology, agroforestry, etc. But all this information is scattered and disorganized, so the network would have to organize this information and systematize it and make it available for everyone. And also farmers and technicians need technical support to do all this. So soil fertility is directly linked to all these factors and need to be considered in the building of the network. So as I said, an important tool for achieving this is the International Code of Conduct for the Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizers. And recently we launched a survey, a national survey, to understand better the use of fertilizers and the main obstacles that countries have for achieving the sustainable use of fertilizers. 150 participants from 61 countries participated. So when we received these results and we analyzed it, it's very clear to us that InSoilFer needs to be multi-sectoral and diverse. For example, in this survey, 44% of the people that responded it came from the academic sector. So we also need to embrace, of course, at the core, the farmers associations, but also the private sector and other sectors that are more than welcome to build a network. And also we could understand which are the main barriers to achieve sustainable soil management, for example, monoculture, and a wide array of inappropriate crop practices. We need to change the perception of what fertilizers are. We have just heard one outstanding example from Dr. Mariangela. We need to use, for example, microorganisms. We don't have only mineral sources or organic sources. Very important to us is to say that InSoilFer would advocate for a paradigm shift. So there is no single solution to all problems, to all fertility problems, but it's more that we have a portfolio of alternatives available that can be employed. For example, the increase of soil organic carbon, the use of soil microorganisms to improve the efficiency of mineral fertilizers, capacity development, etc. Also, very important to emphasize that InSoilFer will have an integral concept of soil fertility, considering the chemical, physical, and biological properties that are needed for a soil to be healthy and to provide fertility for adequate crop production. Also, in SoilFair, we'll try to embrace and include many different strategies, nature-based solutions, soil organic matter addition, pulses, biofertilizers, biostimulants, etc., but also management-based tools, different types of fertilizers, therefore our approach, but also without leaving technology aside, by developing, for example, applications, calibrating models, and precision agriculture. So the goals of the network would be the adoption and implementation of sustainable and balanced soil fertility management, avoiding the underuse, misuse, and overuse of fertilizers, reducing the environmental and health impacts of fertilizer sources, and evaluate and improve the safety and the quality of fertilizers. So we have proposed initially these 4 lines of action for the network. Number 1, the establishment of a soil nutrient monitoring system is very important to support these monitoring systems in terms of the soil nutrient management at different scales, national, but regional, but also at local scales, because fertility happens at local scales. Number 2, the promotion and the dissemination of sustainable management of soil nutrients and fertilization practices. So we need to promote sustainable soil management practices. We need to gather these practices, make them available, to group them by different crops, weather, climate change resilience, etc. Conditions of soils. Number 3, the capacity development for reducing the impacts of soil nutrient management on the environment and climate change. So we need to strengthen the capacities of the different countries for measurement these impacts. For example, the production of greenhouse gases emission because of fertilizer application, or the measurement of the impacts in terms of environmental pollution, especially water. Number 4, the fertilizer safety and quality assessment. So probably many of you know that the International Network on Fertilizer Analysis has been doing this work, but then INFA would be now part of this new network, especially in the working group 4. So now what is next? What is important is now the formation of these 4 working groups, or more 4 working groups as needed. So we propose to do a first meeting for these working groups this year, because what we need now is clear goals and a clear and a very clear work plan on the short, medium, and long term for the network. Very important, we need hard voluntary work, because we need to build documents, build the network, build the work plan, build the website, for example. So the invitation for all of you is to join the network, as I can see in the chat, in the question and answer part. So all of you have a lot to say, so we will be very happy to hear all of you, because the network is yours. So we invite you to join and to express all you want to contribute. So I would like to finish with one last thought of this information taken from the State of Food Security and Nutrition of the World in this year, that has been released this year. Agri-food systems remain highly vulnerable to stocks and disruptions arising from conflict, climate variability, and extremes and economic contraction. So these factors, combined with growing inequities, keep challenging the capacity of agri-food systems to deliver nutritious, safe, and affordable diets for us. So these problems are our new normal, so we need to embrace these problems and try to solve them through the sustainable soil management and sustainable management also of fertilizers. So thank you, Ronald, and thank you everyone for your attention. I tried to do it very briefly.
Well, thank you very much, Vinisa. I think we are, we passed 6 minutes after the time that we should be ending this webinar. And I think it has been your presentation was enriching in terms of why the Insolver, and I didn't see any questioning why Insolver. So I suppose you all agree that this network is needed, and we want to rely with all people who wants to come together to bring solutions, because you know, as FAO and the Global Soil Partnership, we are always working with our FAO members plus all the other partners in trying to address the issues that are out, and the issues are many. But we saw today there are many solutions as well. So we really need to make those solutions possible. And this network will bring the know-how, the technical, the science, and that is there in order to give sound responses to all the problems. I was looking at it and asking and reading many questions, how I get involved in the network. So the way forward is very simple. Together with the links to the presentations, to the recording of this meeting and a short report, you will receive this email with all this content, but also with an email address or link where you can register to be part of Insolver. Then, once we get all the registrations, we will organize the first meeting of the network in order to distribute tasks, okay? What I mean by tasks, we need to build a network, the governance, clear roles and responsibilities, etc. But the first step is to start building the network together and knowing who wants to join. So we will be sending you this email with all the information from this webinar so that you can take action. That is the way forward. And we really hope we can count with you, because as you can see, there is a lot of work to do. And we have seen different perspectives today from different continents. The challenge is always the same. How can we produce more nutritious food without degrading our soils and other natural resources, without negatively contributing to climate change, without affecting the pockets of our farmers? Because don't forget that agriculture is their income. So we need to help them, no matter if they are smallholders or medium, but they are farmers and they have chosen this. And for us, this is very important because our food security rely on them. Therefore, this Insolver is really trying to contribute from the science and technical perspective to these objectives. So I really hope you enjoy the webinar, the presentations, but particularly you will be joining Insolver. So you will be receiving this email very soon. I want to thank very much all the speakers who did great interventions, giving all this diversity that we appreciate in terms of interest perspectives, but there was something in common: how to enhance soil fertility and make our soils more productive. And we have many options. That's what gives me hope, and I think we can do more and better. So thanks a lot. We close here the webinar, and we can say that Insolver is launched, but we will start building it. So we will just do it with your contribution. Thank you very much to the speakers, to all the participants, and we hope we will be connected again and very soon. Thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.